And there's a popular song that was sung for many years. I owe my soul to the company store. Again, you had to buy all your wares, everything you needed at the company store, and most of the time you got really, really deep in debt to the company store. So the more deep you were in debt, the more less chance you had of leaving. President Roosevelt eventually outlawed these company houses. Now, there is at least one exception. Disney World, which is the nation's biggest employer on one campus, still has housing where the college students can go and live while they work at Disney for a few months. And again, the Disney buses come to these houses and carry their workers to all over the Disney campus. So they still have a few company houses, but they're not quite the same. You know, you still can go to any church you want to and shop at any store you want to. Dance halls, saloons became popular. Young people now could meet each other not through formal introduction, but in the dance halls. Go to a dance hall and meet a person you might think you like to marry. Nation's first fully paid professional team was the Cincinnati Red Stockings. No, they're not today's Cincinnati Reds. The Red Stockings moved to Boston, became the Boston Red Sox. So a new team moved to Cincinnati, and they called themselves the Cincinnati Redlegs. Today they're just the Cincinnati Reds. Anyway, the Cincinnati Red Stockings had a man that hit 59 home runs and batted .500, but this was not done against professional players. They won every game except the last one. Finally, they went to Brooklyn, and a team from Brooklyn beat them. Baseball drew people together from all classes. Coney Island became a popular New York resort. It was private enterprise that built the cities. The cities were for the most part not planned. Structural steel made for taller buildings. Now, in 1871, a fire occurred in Chicago. Nobody knows how the fire started. The story that got around was that a cow kicked over a lantern, and if you know anything, those lanterns had kerosene in them, and the lantern was on top of a stack of dry hay. So once the cow kicked over the lantern, the fire quickly got out of control and spread all over downtown Chicago and burned away much of Chicago. But in the place, the people of Chicago built tall apartments. The rooms in them were called flats. The flats had modern plumbing, sinks coming in. The women liked the flats because they were small and there was a lot less cleaning to do. They had the inside toilets and inside plumbing, and they were better for living than the old houses. Sewers were improved, water was improved, particularly an outbreak of typhoid fever occurred. They found out that typhoid fever was caused by sewer water getting into drinking water, and they eventually somewhat solved the problem. Streets began to be paved, electric lights began to replace gas lights, subways were built. We still have them. Trolley tracks, the trolleys were run by electric motors. And yes, we still have MARTA here. Well, even in not counting MARTA, there are trolleys in Atlanta these days. All your big cities still have the trolleys. It's cheap because you don't have to buy gasoline. It's also pollution free. Again, those electric motors, the pollution is outside the city, and the electricity is clean. The rich benefited from these improvements, but so did the poor. The cities had two sides: parks, skyscrapers, libraries, bridges. Then there were the criminals, the corrupt politicians, the bosses. About the bosses, the bosses did a lot to build the cities, but they often were corrupt. Essentially what the bosses would do, they would attract the poor people. Now they'd find an immigrant who had just come in and was lost as an Easter egg, you might say, and they would tell them, hey, now we can get you a job, we can do this for you, we can settle you in some housing, we can find people in what country you're from, we'll find people from your country, and you'll find people like yourself. And then the bosses knew that these immigrants were going to vote for them come election time. The worst boss in the country was William Marcy Tweed of New York. He was the head of a party machine called the Tweed Ring, sometimes also known as Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall and Tweed Ring, different names for the same thing. The purpose of the ring was to organize win elections, and reward loyal followers. So they got down to the grassroots and got the very poorest of people on their side, and they got the votes. But Tweed, he would build a bridge. The bridge might cost him about $300,000-400,000, but he would charge more than $1 million for the bridge, and guess where the rest of the money went? Right into the pockets of the corrupt politicians who had asked the bridge to be built in the first place. There was a cartoon, again, in one of my history books. It had a bunch of politicians, corrupt bosses around in the ring, and right in the middle of the ring was Tweed himself, and they say, who stole the people's money? And the answer is, somebody pointed a finger and said, 'twas him. Tweed wound up being arrested. He went across the ocean to try to escape jail. They went there and extradited him back to the States. He died completely broken and died in jail. The city leaders, the bosses, eventually learned that they had to live with each other, though they often, one of them was just as corrupt as the other. But they'd point a finger like the pot looked over the kettle, and the pot said to the kettle, "You're black." And the kettle said to the pot, "Well, you're just as black as I am." But anyway, they both would accuse each other of corruption, and they were both one as corrupt as the other. But they often hated each other. But they eventually learned to live with each other. Okay, folk, spending a few minutes talking about the test. Here's the format now. For instance, now this will not be on the test. If you were to see this, I don't blame you, most of you probably don't know who this man was. If you just put a Confederate general, a Confederate general, that'd be 3 points. 3 points apiece, 35 questions, and I'm counting the points from, you might say, the bottom up. That means you get 5 points. I mean, you might notice, say, 35 times 3 is 105. That's true. That means you get 5 points just for showing up and taking the test. But then beyond the 5 points, 3 points for each right answer. But if you just simply put a general, I'd count off a point. Now for chapter 15 and 15 only, I want you to put Confederate. Now, for instance, if somebody asks you to write Battle of Atlanta, yes, it was a Civil War battle. Who knows who won it? Anybody know who won it? Battle of Atlanta was won by the North. That's why the city of Atlanta was burned to the ground. The North won it, and General Sherman ordered it burned to the ground. In other words, if you put North, North won this Civil War battle, I'd count it right. Now again, you won't see any of these actually on the test. But I'm giving you examples of how you'd answer these. So if you don't know the answer, it's because I don't intend to ask it. But come to think of it, I did mention the Battle of Atlanta. I probably didn't call it that, but I mentioned it, and how that, I mean, after all, it's so close, and how that Sherman, he actually regretted burning it. He said, "I know these people, that they're going to build a more beautiful city than the one I burned." And just like the Chicago people. Now, of course, in the case of the Chicago, a few years later, they had structural steel. The people of Atlanta didn't, but they built a more beautiful city than the one that Sherman burned down. All right. Let's see. Is there anything else you need to see? Again, don't bring a Scantron. You won't need it. I prefer you use pencil because, you know, you can more easily erase it. Try to practice your best handwriting. It's hard on me to read bad writing. And again, the papers are due. Everybody then, with that out of the way, everybody